Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Thoughts webinar series. I am Adrian. I am from the Neurum's marketing team. So before we start this webinar, I'll go through some housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto various platforms. If you have any concerns, please let us know. During this webinar, please keep your microphone muted. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please type it in the chat box. We'll attend to it after the presentation. Or you can use the Pigeonhole link that I will be sharing in a bit, and you can submit your questions anonymously. Alternatively, we have a QA session towards the end of this presentation, so feel free to ask questions after that. So for today's webinar, we'll be exploring a modern approach to employee motivation and productivity. Joining us today, we have Neurum's Psychology Program Lead, Himani Kulkarni. She'll be focusing on how digital intervention can bring behavioral health outcomes. I'll pass the time to Himani.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Hello, and a very warm welcome to everybody. It's really nice to see our own understanding and our own desire to learn more about what motivates employees, what makes us more productive, and just generally improves the well-being of all of us. So for this conversation today, let's just quickly go over what we will be talking about today. I'll just share my screen. Awesome. Let me know if at any point my voice or my screen is not visible. Please drop in something in the chat box so I know. But let's just start with it. So, like I said, today we will be talking about a couple of different areas that come together to make employee motivation and productivity. Most importantly being, as you might be aware, this is a part of us disseminating our research that has been published recently to show how digital interventions can be an new, a modern, but also extremely effective tool to help improve well-being for employees at the workplace. Now, digital intervention have been employed to help with well-being for a while now, for a couple of years, but it's still quite fresh. And we are still building the understanding of what exactly is digital intervention. So today we will talk about that. We'll talk about why it's needed in the workplace, what the need for that space is, and also talking about the results that we received as a part of this research, the outcomes that we've seen, and the implications that we have of a research like this. I'm very happy to share all of this information with you and would be very happy to hear your thoughts as we go on. So starting with what is digital intervention? The idea is that different kinds of interventions for behavioral change, for a change in health outcomes, a change in the way we live in our world, our own well-being, have been happening for a couple of years. And especially in the space for digital interventions, the idea is to make something that's more easily accessible, that's available online, that's available through some kind of a technology. So to just give a quick history of it, it started with, say, something like a helpline model where people could reach out to volunteers, Samaritans, mental health professionals to seek some kind of intervention, moved on to video interventions or doctors reaching out to people through video calls. And I think now, since the pandemic, the understanding that we need technology that supports mental health and emotional health and behavioral health in a way that reaches people the best is very, very crucial. So digital health interventions are all of these interventions, and the interventions that we are now delivering through applications, mobile applications. So apps that provide a space for not just a place to share what is happening with you, but also provide you with the guidance, good actions for you, good habits for you to inculcate in your daily life. So all of that would be a broad umbrella of what we call digital health interventions in the behavioral health space right now. When we talk about behavioral health interventions, the most crucial thing to understand is that these needs to be interventions that people can actually apply to their lives. While they can be suggestions, while they can be things that people can think about, they also need to be applicable to the lives they are living. So they need to be both scalable, but also very, very personalized in a way. So those are the spaces that behavioral interventions, digital behavioral health interventions broadly cover in terms of what we're trying to build towards for health outcomes. So why would digital intervention be helpful? What is it that it looks to do? What it is that it aims to provide for most people? The areas where in the last couple of years, historically, and also at the moment it's building towards, is increasing self-esteem, helping people understand what it is that they're struggling with. And as a mental health professional, I understand that one of the biggest areas where people struggle with when they first start talking about their own mental health, their own emotional health, is understanding what it is that they are struggling with. If there is a lot that's happening, it's very likely that we are unable to give it a name, to give it a handle to hold on. So a lot of exercises that even we at Neurum build towards are to enable that sense of insight, to enable people to understand their own feelings, their own thoughts, their own patterns in relationships, at work, at different areas of their lives, actually. So to enable insight, to build people's self-esteem, it's often that our own relationships, our own work, our own society, culture that we live in might have views that don't apply to our lives, that feel very judgmental sometimes, that do not validate the lives that we live. And that increases beliefs about self that are very, very critical, that are very, very harsh. And another area that digital intervention focuses on is helping people see that side of themselves that's capable, that's strong, that's able to look at life in a more positive manner. So the core of it is to improve well-being in all areas, be it relationships, be it mental health, be it our own emotions, be it relationships, all of these areas. And in all of these areas, especially depression and anxiety have got a significant amount of focus for obvious reasons in the last couple of years. It ends up being a situation of crisis and requires intervention quickly. So it's not surprising that digital intervention has also focused mostly on that in the last couple of years. But we are also learning that all behavioral intervention does not need to happen once a problem has occurred. Mental health by itself lies on a spectrum. That means all of us as people sometimes have a healthy life where we are thriving, we are doing well. Sometimes we are struggling, we need a little bit of support, we are a little overwhelmed, we might be feeling stressed. And all we need is somebody who can help us see things the way they are and a little bit of guidance. Then there would be a stage where we need more support. It's not enough with the coping skills that we have. So maybe we need to go to a therapist or a counselor. And then obviously there's a stage where we need more acute intervention, which could be medication or hospitalization. And I say we because the way we are understanding mental health is that it's not us versus them. It's not people who have mental health concerns and people who don't. It's all of us on somewhere on that spectrum. So with that understanding, we are now looking at digital intervention, not just for acute stress or acute anxiety or depression, but also preventing reaching there for all of us. Especially in the workspace, when we look at the workspace, we understand, let me show you this graph. So in the workspace, we understand that not everybody is in need of an acute mental health support as well, but all of us are in need of some kind of well-being that needs to be ensured. So this survey also brought out this understanding that 75 out of 100 employees are okay as long as there is some support available. There, maybe they need a little bit help with maintaining a routine. They need some help with just understanding their own behavior, and that helps their mental health needs, and that's where they are. Then there are some employees who need a little more support. So maybe they need some counseling, they need some therapy, and they need to talk to someone to regain a sense of themselves. Then maybe there would be one employee that needs much more acute care. This understanding also improves our belief in what workplace well-being needs to look like and what it can be, where it can be the most helpful. So our literature review for this research helped us see how, especially in East Asia, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in China, that a lot of the culture, but still well-being gets ignored. And we are seeing how, because of that, what happens is that absenteeism, people would take leaves because they're just not feeling well. And that's not physical health that we're talking about. Presentism increases where people are present at work, but their productivity and motivation levels decrease a lot. And this has significant financial costs for the company and obviously in the long term for the employee and their own career. So this helps us see that workplaces are also moving punitive action or disciplinary action to a well-being and concern action. So when you see an employee who's been suddenly unproductive, the idea for most workplaces where we are moving is not to say this is an employee who has a personal flaw, but to understand that this could be coming from a place of some kind of behavioral struggle, emotional struggle, And if support is provided, it's possible that both well-being and productivity and motivation would also increase for this person. So what can digital intervention do for the workplace? Digital intervention in the workplace is extremely helpful, mostly because it is able to bypass some of the barriers that intervention that's more traditional has been facing. One of the biggest concerns with any kind of mental health intervention in the Asian region or in East Asia, but also most of Asia, is the sense of stigma that comes with it. When we talk about taking help in any way, taking support in any way, and they would rather struggle with it by themselves because they have no vocabulary or a conceptual understanding of what kind of support they could access. So what digital intervention is able to do is it's something that it's in an application in your own mobile phones. It enables a sense of privacy to feel more agential also. It increases the sense of agency that, oh, I'm doing something to improve my own life. I'm actually feeling better about what kind of work I'm able to do for myself. Similarly, it's able to reach more people with lower resources. If we think from the terms of like an organization or a workplace, it can reach more people more easily scalable. Also, this sort of model that Neurum works on, extremely personalized. It's not that the same kind of care has to reach everyone. It has the possibility of being very, very specific to the needs of the person, much more accessible, much cheaper, which are all increasing accessibility for people across, terms of class or region or language, all of that. And it's a tough pill for all of us to accept, but we understand that the sort of mental health that's available across this region is also quite expensive. It requires something that fills in that gap and reduces the pressure on the health systems overall. So in this particular research for this particular module, what we worked on was looking at how the digital intervention we have designed for the workplace, specifically to look at workplace stress, productivity, and motivation, can be helpful to increase productivity, increase motivation, and reduce stress from the workplaces for employees that we are concerned for. So when we look at motivation, we are talking about an internal sense of motivation of something that enables them to work towards their own goals and also the goals of the company and team they are a part of, increases their enthusiasm, their sense of their desire to create actually. And similarly, help. And when stress is reduced and motivation is increased, suggests that productivity would increase. So that's where we looked at in terms of designing this module when we were trying to look for something that works at the workplace. Yeah, so how does it do it? What do we do for reducing stress and increasing productivity and motivation? When we're talking about stressors, because of the nature of this intervention, we are also looking at just in a person's surrounding have towards these stressors. Obviously, for all of us, the sort of response we would have towards a stressor depends upon multiple factors. But one of the factors that seems to make a huge difference is how we feel in that surrounding. Sorry, I got a notification saying that my network was weak. Can you show me? Okay, I'll just go. So we look at what sort of stress responses these are, how we can actually look at improving our sense of coping, our sense of ability to deal with these stresses in a way using the techniques that are possible for the person to do much more easily in a much more comfortable manner, and go on to make sure that they are able to perform the way that they want to. So when we look at stress responses, we're talking about techniques that improve coping internally and externally. So things that we would do to make ourselves feel better, anything from breathing techniques to physical techniques to more emotional and cognitive techniques as well. Similarly, we looked at what improves motivation for people. So we looked at theories of motivation and how we understand people's motivation to go up and what kind of thought patterns would help with it. Specifically, their own interest in that work, how that could be facilitated, how they could be helped to understand the parts of their work that speak to them the best, increase creativity in that workspace to help them see that, and also to improve communication with the people that could help them with it. A lot of times, even in my own mental health work that I'm doing in this role, a lot of what we hear from people during our research is that people feel so stuck in their roles as employees that even if problems are very easily solvable, they would not reach out to colleagues and managers, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of doubt, and all of that reduces motivation, reduces productivity. So those are the areas that we look at improving as a part of this intervention. So like I said, our objective for the study was to see the impact of this particular intervention that we had designed, to see how it responds to stress, motivation, and productivity at the workplace. Quickly going through the methodology to understand how we studied this. So this was a quasi-experimental design, which means that we had a control group and we had an intervention group, which means that the intervention group took a pretest before, both the groups took a pretest. Then the intervention group used this intervention for 7 days and the control group did not. And after 7 days, both the groups took the same assessments all over again. And their scores were compared from a two-tailed test to understand what the significance of this result is, or what the direction of this result is. I'll go through the intervention a little bit in a little more detail before we move on to the results that we found from this study. So to understand what this intervention focused on is a lot of what I've already talked about in terms of what we think, what we found from research was helpful. First bit of it, it was a 6-part intervention. The first bit of that intervention was about focusing on helping people understand what about their situation is feeling stressful, where their areas of motivation are, where the areas of concern are, what's making them less productive than they would like to be. So the first is about just psychoeducation, helping them see how some thoughts, some feelings might have an impact, their own bodily health, their own contributing to where they are. What is it that stress looks like? For a lot of us, when we first experience any kind of stressor, our responses are so strong that we are unable to see beyond that response and recognize that this is a situation that's making me feel a certain way, or that's making me feel stressed. We might have like increased heartbeat or sweating or just having thoughts that things would not pan out, and extremely negative thoughts sometimes, but we might still not recognize that this is a stress response. So just that understanding that I'm in a situation where I'm feeling something is extremely new, and while new is exciting, new is also sometimes scary. So that means my body is feeling stressful, my mind is acting in a way, my mind is having feelings and thoughts that are associated with stress. Even that understanding can be a huge intervention for someone who's not had that insight and is unable to connect those dots. So that's the first part we look at in this intervention. The second is somatic techniques. When we say somatic techniques, it means techniques that are to do with body, but connecting the mind and the body together. So this includes breathing techniques that help the person feel a little more grounded. So grounding techniques to bring the person to the present situation. A lot of times when our mind is overworking and it's thinking at a very fast pace, it doesn't allow for us to be in the present moment. It takes us either to the future or to the past. And grounding techniques help us bring ourselves back into the present. So that was the second part. It looked at how using our body can be a fantastic tool to help us feel more relaxed. The third were the cognitive techniques. When we mean cognitive, we mean techniques about how we are thinking, what the patterns of our thoughts are, whether these thoughts are something that's helpful to us, or is it something that's making us more stressed, less motivated at our own workplace. So this would include thinking about maybe, we are thinking in a very all or none fashion. So that would mean that if I'm not doing 100% job, and if my job does not have 100% results, I feel like a failure. If that's the case, this thinking, this thought pattern might prevent me from actually improving in the way that I want to. So working on those thought processes, those thinking patterns. The next is person-centered techniques. Person-centered techniques. These are techniques that focus a lot on understanding the person where they are. A lot of times, all of these techniques help once the person feels understood. Once we are able to convey that what you're going through is a very normal response. A lot of us go through something like that, and really just validating the feeling, really just helping them see what are the parts of themselves that are important, that are helpful, that are capable in a lot of ways. Then the last are positive psychology techniques. These are techniques that work on building hope for the future and building a sense of confidence in the self. This focuses on self-esteem, focuses on really helping the person see what they can build towards and what are the parts of themselves that they can foster better. So all of this, these different types of techniques were each in one module each, one session each, and together they made the whole intervention. All of these were divided into multiple parts for the ease of the user to make sure that they are able to, say, take out 5 minutes in a day, 10 minutes in a day, whatever is comfortable to them, something that they are using right before going to sleep, or once they're waking up in the morning, or sometime when they're feeling anxious in the moment. So all of these were to help the person have it something that's readily available to them when they're going through challenges. So this has elements of being both short-term or immediate relief, and something that creates a difference in the long term. So that was the core of the intervention that we have designed. This is what it looked like on the app. As you can see, it talks about various areas. This is what the insights page looks like. You can see what you've been working on, what's the next thing to work at. Really focusing on helping people look at one problem and then divide it into parts that are manageable. A lot of our stress, especially in spaces where it feels extremely overwhelming, comes from feeling that it's too big to move. And one of our attempts with something that we're doing at Neurum, these bite-sized interventions, these accessible interventions, is to just make it more approachable for the person, that my stress does not need to make me feel like I cannot approach it, I cannot deal with it. If I break it down into different parts of what stress is like, I might just be able to read about it, take some action, just sit with it a little bit longer. So that's the aim of keeping these interventions the way they are, the way they're delivered, not just in their content, but also our fantastic team works super hard to make them easily accessible to people in the way they are delivered. All right. So moving on to the results section. Now we are looking at what is the result that we have got from the study, from taking the pre-test and the post-test from both intervention and control groups, and the results that we've got from it. So as you can see in this table, for the intervention group, the p-value for stress, productivity, and motivation were all found to be significant at the 95% interval, which means that statistically speaking, if 95 out of 100 times this experiment is to be repeated, we would see that people's stress would be reduced, productivity and motivation would be improved by using the intervention that we have designed. For the control group, similarly, same results were calculated, and we saw that for productivity, for control group, we still saw a difference, but for stress and motivation for the control group, as expected, there was no difference. There was no difference in terms of statistically seeing the results before and after for the score of the entire sample. So what that could mean for us is a couple of different things in terms of productivity, motivation, and stress. But most importantly, for us to understand that digital intervention for the group that it was using that was able to show a significant difference in the scores for stress before and stress after, productivity and motivation before and after. So stress was reduced, productivity and motivation were improved for the group that was using this intervention. Now let's talk a little bit about why we think this worked and why we saw the differences that we did. So most likely reasons from our literature review and from the data that we have is that the stress was reduced because one part was the design of the tool and the second was the type of content that it had. The design enabled people, like I was saying earlier, to just use it at their own pace, not feel stigmatized about mental health like they would if they were to access support from, say, maybe another person, which is, again, something that our entire culture is going through, that transition of being just more okay with talking about mental health. So it enables confidentiality, enables a sense of privacy, and it's extremely guided in its approach. It helps people go from one tool to another, tells them what they can work on next. It helps with that process without leaving them, leaving them having to decide what next needs to be done. I think that balance between agency and guidance is the core of what digital intervention is trying to do, and that we're trying to do at Neurum here to enable people in their journey of behavioral health and mental health. How much would they need to do things on their own, and where do we come in to help with that doing on their own? Secondly is the variety of the content. Really helps to see the different kinds of content that we have. We tried to focus on different areas of workplace stressors from the research that we did. So it's likely that one of the reasons for that stress to reduce was this as well. Similarly, for motivation, I think what our research also shows is that internal barriers to motivation were reduced. That means that people were able to feel more attached to the work that they were doing, less burdened by it, more creatively involved, and just enable them to, like I was saying earlier, reach out to more people, help in that process. Mental health will not have, mental solutions don't have an answer that says, you should do this, but they enable people to do this. So maybe a mental health intervention cannot change the kind of work scope that an employee has to improve motivation. But what it can help with is a sense of belief, a sense of creativity and confidence that they reach out to their team, their managers, or their own creative selves and make their work a little more interesting for themselves, just garner more support and just ability to work through that space that's opened up for them. I think the best metaphor that I like for this sense of intervention is that it feels like a clear sky. So it's not that sunrise or sunlight would increase, but if there are lesser clouds, you're just able to see better. So that's the sense of intervention that it enables to do. Similarly, when their sense of self improves, when they believe more in themselves, their motivation to do things increases at the workplace. For productivity, when these roadblocks were removed, when there was lesser stress and lesser motivation, research suggests that productivity is bound to improve through any intervention. And I think that's one of the things that worked here as well. While in the intervention, we didn't focus on productivity as much. We focused on making sure that motivation and stress were something that we targeted. Productivity is something that we believe from believing in the sense of people in their own strengths, from a very strengths-based approach, that if roadblocks are removed, people's productivity would increase. Similarly, just engaging in the self-work, that you are taking some time out every day to focus on your self-esteem and your stress levels and your motivation level, improves our mental state, improves our behavioral space to increase productivity by itself. All right, so lastly, just concluding with that, what that research had to say, that the motivation levels and stress levels are both directly impacted by the intervention. And because of the strong relationship between stress, motivation, and productivity, we saw an increase in productivity levels also after people used, like our intervention group used this tool for 7 days. There was an increase in productivity in the control group as well, which we understand could be possible because of 2 reasons. Number one is that the people who were taking those pre and post tests looked at productivity from a different space because of taking this pre-test and post-test assessments. Number two, intervention sometimes happens only with insight alone. So it is possible that going through these assessments made them a little more cognizant of what they were doing, cognizant of their own productivity levels, and that increased productivity. Like I was saying earlier, the intervention did not have to focus on productivity. Intervention focused on motivation and stress, which improves well-being and therefore increases productivity. So similarly, I think what our research suggests has similar for the control group as well. So what are the implications? Where are we looking ahead from here? I think this research has brought out new energy for us at Neurum as well, and in the terms of what is possible at the workplace, in the area of workplace well-being, especially with digital interventions. It's crucial to see that the impact, both financial, personal, and in terms of human resource, that is of mental health space, that it is for all employees, for well-being, that it is for all employees, is a very, very significant space. And any impact that improves people's sense of belief in themselves, their well-being, their emotional needs, always ends up being beneficial to both themselves and the workspaces. So we are looking forward to building more in terms of workplaces, building more for guiding people, helping people through digital interventions in the workspace, and also collaborating with companies to make sure that it reaches the right people. So more research, more interventions, and validating more of our programs to make sure that we are creating what helps people. Yeah, that brings us to the end of our conversation. Like I said, just concluding with the understanding that workspace well-being is such a huge space for us, even targeting at the moment, that it will be really fascinating to see what we can help people with something like digital intervention going forward. Thank you so much. I'll pass the mic to Adrian.
Thank you very much, Himani. I'm sure people, attendees have a lot of questions. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat box or use our pigeonhole to submit anonymously. Meanwhile, we already have some questions that Himani can help answer. The first one is, what does a digital intervention looks like? Are there things to do or videos, etc.?
Yes, actually digital intervention looks like a couple of different things, both of that as well. So some of what we design has questions to build insights. So it would ask you to reflect a little bit. What has your day been like? Is there something that stands out for you in your day? If it's about a specific topic, then it would probably ask you, something like, what are the things that you are doing at work to improve your well-being? Is this thing helpful? Is this thing something that supports you? So it would definitely work in the area of building insights. So it's something for you to think about, write about, and to improve your skills as well. It will give you sometimes some scenarios to see how you respond to it, improving communication, for example. And at the same time, it has guided audios and videos to just help you feel more relaxed if that's the nature of the content. So yes, all of that text and reflection and journaling and videos and audios and all of those exercises is digital intervention.
Thank you. Another question we have is, if our workplace culture is not friendly for mental health, is something like this going to be helpful? If so, how?
That's a great question. I think digital intervention, especially when applied through the workplace, is a great first sign, because that means that workplace has become cognizant of the need of something like this. So that's, as a first step, it's very, very helpful to just know that now you have something to talk about. So it's not, what is stress? Stress is not being invalidated anymore. We know it exists. So the language is the first step. The second is that once it is available, it enables you to take some action as well. So maybe it's possible that what you're experiencing at the workplace is not feeling right for your well-being. But is there something that's under your control to change about it? Can you reach out to more colleagues for any kind of support? Can you reach out to managers for any kind of support? Is there something you can change in your routine to make your life a little more comfortable, a little more creative for yourself? So definitely, like I was saying, it's not saying that it changes the culture in one go, but having a mental health support at the workplace and then having something that enables you personally would start to definitely turn the wheels, I would say.
Right, and digital intervention, for example, the Neurum app is definitely unbiased and it's very private. You can do it at your own pace, at your own time. So it will definitely help improving your mind health and other behavioral health as well. Another question we have is, our company is struggling with employees engaging with our mental health initiatives, for example, EAP. What does Neurum do differently to help people engage with their mental health?
Great. Another great question. I think one of the biggest barriers from my experience in the EAP industry is that people struggle to feel the trust, to see the sense of confidentiality that comes with something like an EAP. And also people themselves are not aware about what sort of concerns they can reach out to an EAP for. So couple of things: personal stigma about the trust that could come from an EAP service. Those are the areas where struggle generally lies. What Neurum does differently is that it is the farthest it can go to be confidential in terms of just being between the person and Neurum. There's no way any company, any sort of in-between person could have any access to what you're talking about, what you're sharing. And because of the way it is designed, it also makes sure to not just have interventions as they are, but also continuously psychoeducate people about what they could use the app for. What are the areas where people could reach out to? A lot of times people might believe that, sure, for depression, I could talk to somebody, but is relationship a concern worth reaching out to somebody for? So obviously, Neurum also works in this area to make sure that people know that any area where they're feeling a need for support or they're feeling less like themselves is an area where they can reach out to people and ask for support or use this space. So definitely something we are doing to work in both areas in confidentiality and awareness to ensure that engagement is better.
Thank you. And I actually have some data showing that the average usage of EAP is less than 1% in APAC. So if you're looking for an effective way to engage your employees, maybe digital intervention is something to look at. Navigating the, for example, the shifting demographic in your workplace. Gen Z is becoming the largest population in the workforce. So your strategy and tools has to be different from what traditional companies are doing, or more conventional approach. We do have another questions for Himani. You show a breakdown earlier. Does this mean actually not everyone needs to see a doctor or therapist?
Need and can are slightly different questions. So I would say people could go to a therapist if they feel that they want to, if there is something they want to explore. Obviously, that's always an option. I think, but definitely that breakdown helps us see that it's not an acute need. It's possible for us to employ interventions before the need for therapy gets involved. So definitely there are multiple layers or multiple levels at which mental health interventions can be employed. And most of the population does not actively need interventions to be from a crisis point of view or from a very, very detailed point of view. Sometimes people just want something that would be easy and comfortable, and that's where digital intervention shines the best.
Right. And then we'll have another question. Do you see a lot of differences between relevant research in digital intervention in the West and Asia?
Mental health as a sector only is very different in the West and in Asia. It's a huge cultural difference. I think Asian countries and Asian culture is starting to transition into a space of much more open, quite fresh. It's still in a space, a lot more interventions and a variety of different kinds to enable that process. So definitely there's a difference.
Is there any other questions that Himani can answer? Please submit it.
I see something in here. No, it's the same questions you repeated.
If not, I think we're getting close to the end of this sharing, and thank you very much for joining, and thank you, Himani, for answering all those questions. If you have any questions about engaging your employees and also improving your workforce mental health and behavioral health, please feel free to reach out to our team. Our team is here to assist and advise. Well, thank you very much and take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. See you guys.